Welcome to The Middlemen. I'm Tom Lemongello, and I'm here with Todd Sawicki. We, as middlemen, live at the intersection of media and e-commerce, and we would like for you to join us in our discussions where we turn that chaotic intersection into your comfort zone. Welcome. This is The Middlemen's, our holiday edition. This is probably the last episode of the year. And I'm really excited that we have May Karwowski, friend of mine from back in the New York tech days. I knew her as May Wow previously, even before it was co-opted by the Jersey Shore character. She was the original May Wow. And so, wow, it's great to be back and see you. And the reason we brought you on is because not only was your company obviously acquired, it was also named as a partner to Walmart Connect. And I said, oh, it is definitely time to reconnect because now you are right in the wheelhouse of things that the middlemen like to talk about. So welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Great.
I think I would love to hear a little bit about how Obviously, which is an agency that is now part of WPP, how that all came about. What is your journey?
So I just really saw that social media was such a had way more of a huge effect on culture than I think people were really giving it credit for, and that not many people were in the space, when I graduated college. So I started managing Facebook pages, and then I started working on Instagram, doing some social media strategy, and then quickly realized, the way to make all the numbers go up is to actually work with people who've already built out their own audiences. and brands should really be focused on doing that. And so I, left my full-time job, started obviously out of my apartment, in 2013, and from there just really focused on how do we crack this influencer thing. This is we're in the really nascent stages. Brands are barely spending any money on it. How do we figure this out? And we really we were born from that idea.
Well, I didn't really know much about the influencer world outside of being just an early Twitter person. And so I think I was probably too early to really see the influencer rise. And what did happen is when I joined Quotient, which is a company I mentioned on almost every one of these podcasts, because that's where I was brought up. The company had basically bought Ahology, which was an early player in retail media influencer or micro influencer content creation and curation, because what they did was they said, okay, we're getting all this traction on Pinterest and Facebook and elsewhere, not really TikTok, because it was mostly image-based, not video-based. They basically were creating lifestyle imagery for brands based on putting out a brief to micro-influencers, many of whom were just around Cincinnati where the company was started. And they were getting brands to sign on for programs where you'd have, mainly it was hey, make sure you take a picture of the Target bag when you put the, CeraVe lotion on your table or something like that. And so it was very early, very simple, but the idea was that type of imagery scored well with the algorithm, so it meant for cheaper paid media. And that was, for a couple of years there from say 2019, 2020, 21, maybe 22, that was kind of it. And so I want to hear what's gone on since then, and how does Walmart Connect look at you guys now, and why is this a going thing? Because honestly, when we were doing it, it was kind of is this a thing?
Yeah, definitely. So when I first started the company, we were working with Uniqlo, and we had Airism T-shirts that we were just let's give them to 1,000 creators. The tagline is made for all. So let's get 1,000 awesome people who have, at least 1,000 followers, between 1,000 and 100,000 followers. And we sent them all T-shirts. And for the most part, it was the first campaign that any of them had ever been part of. We got fantastic content back. We got about 700 pieces of Instagram content back. And in so doing, it was oh, wow, this is a really successful campaign. And it was incredibly hard to do. It was really, really hard. I had to really staff up on the number of interns we had at the company at that time because we were doing it all manually. So we actually started, we built a platform based off that. So how do we work really efficiently at scale? So, of these 1,000 people you're working with, here are the 200 you should keep working with.
I think that's fascinating to get into, to think about, working with 1,000 people in coming from the land of media, right? That Tom and I come from. We're thinking of, how do I reach millions and millions of impressions and millions of people and what have you, and to deal, and also what's interesting in the ad world, right, which is publishers, and a lot of times you can't work with 1,000 publishers, and that's why networks emerged, and ad networks and things like that, because it's too hard to work with that many at a time. And people, emerging publishers like creators are all in the same space, which is, how do I get attention? How do I get these companies to work with me? And it's hard to work with 1,000. It's like, I completely can understand the tables you had set up, and the stacks of T-shirts and stuffing
Mailing
envelopes.
people.
And, oh my God!
We have warehouses. We have warehouses where we'll send over 500,000 packages this year.
Holy crap!
Yeah, so it's just
some operation. Yeah.
How much of influencer marketing is still just sending samples of product? Is that still the prime? Because I know where that started, right? That's exactly where influencer marketing started. A lot of product giveaways, because you saw influencers kind of almost begging, like, send me free stuff, send me free stuff. Like, that was like is that still a big component of influencer marketing or creator marketing, whatever is the appropriate term these days? And maybe it's actually good to understand the transition from influencer to creator in that label. Is it changed? Is it still the same thing? Is it different? But how much is it sending product? You mentioned you have a warehouse, you're sending lots of product. Is that still a big part of influencer/creator marketing today?
Yeah, it's really interesting, because it used to be 100% of the work that we were doing was just product, like post for product. And then as things were really maturing, and I think candidly when creators began to really understand their worth and how much value that they were, how valuable they were, they started charging more, and the economy really grew up. People got talent agents, they got managers, they start to really understand the business side of what they were doing, and realize, like, oh, I can be making 6-7 figures. This is my career now. I'm gonna build an empire, which is awesome to see, and it's so cool to see so many of our creators do that. In so doing, basically, product just seeding kind of really was quiet for several years, and now it's back in a big way. But it's back in a way where that it's not, a post is not expected. So typically, I would say like a industry standard rate is like 20% of the packages you send out, you'll get someone to post about it. We've actually built out our own like, I don't know if it's proprietary, but our own way of doing this. And we've actually been able to get that number up to around like 60 to 70% of the people that we send product to will post. So, in the beauty space, in the CPG space, that's, and really high quality people who are in the target demo, and we can, easily show that to the clients, via our technology. So that's actually come back and had a real resurgence for us, and in a cool creative way too, where we actually have really fantastic boxes and creative campaigns. We actually did a CeraVe campaign, the Michael CeraVe campaign, where there's like all this Michael Cera stuff in a box.
Yeah, I've seen that ad. It's a clever ad, right?
Yeah, and then it was in the Super Bowl, and it was
right.
So it's kind of come back in a really creative, interesting way, and so I think it's all a sign of just the space maturing. And to your point, your question about influencer versus creator, I really like the term creator. I think that influencer is a bit like diminishing or like diminutive. It's like, oh, you just influence people, you just post stuff. But it's actually really, really hard to be a creator. It's hard to make content day in, day out. I mean, both of you were doing this podcast.
Yeah, we know about that. This is our second take on this, because I had to use a different system. My other system was down. So
yeah, exactly.
We know the pains.
It's hard. And it's hard to do that on multiple platforms all the time. Will TikTok be banned? Will it not? How do I do this? How do I negotiate with this brand? Do I get a talent agent? How much do I pay them? How much do I invest in my business? I mean, there's just so many questions. How do I keep my stats up? So I think the term creator is just like, it's much more fair, and I think it's just a better term. But that being said, from an SEO business standpoint, like 99% of traffic comes in via Google with influencer agency.
Interesting, because
Yeah, so we have to balance it. So I'm like semantically, like, we use both because, like, the brands who creators really want to do the deals with, that's what they're searching for. So I think it's just like a sign of, the space being lopsided in some weird ways, and some people are further ahead than others. But we're like, hey, we want to show up in the rankings. Like,
Yeah,
we want our SEM ads to be the best possible. So, like,
That's
That's really
definitely,
fascinating.
yeah, one question we're going to want to ask is, how much of it is vanity metrics versus outcomes and conversions? And I'm assuming as you start to work more with retail media partners that you're going to be more outcome focused.
Yeah, so I think that's conversations shifted a little bit in that I think that brands now understand the value of a really fantastic piece of content. And previously they were thinking of it more maybe from a programmatic lens where I'm literally just paying for this thing to get in front of this audience. And now there's the understanding, wait, there's a step in between that, which is usually someone has to make a really compelling video. And like that person needs to get paid from like getting the thing and
Right.
creating the video to actually their audience.
Well, yeah. I mean, to some extent, that was sort of the challenge in retail media was it was so performance based that there was no room for creative. There were no briefs, and you had to balance the retailer, the brand, and the influencer's personalities, sort of, and assets, all in the same creative. And to some extent, there is a little bit of an argument to say that influencers is the only place to do real creative briefs. And so that and we were like, maybe we should be using this same creative brief that we were using for Facebook, and let's stick it in like a digital out of home ad or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, we've definitely seen and worked with brands who are like, hey, we're gonna put this influencer content on billboards, or we're gonna stitch these together. Let's get all the raw files so that we can make our own commercials. Definitely, I mean, I say a majority of our clients, like a majority of their paid advertising on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube is from this raw content that creators are making, and it works really, really well. And I think there's a real place for super conversion based influencer marketing. Like we have influencers we know, they post, people buy, like their audience just like buys what they post about. But then there are other influencers who just tell a really compelling story, and you need that at the top of the funnel too. And I need to be able to look up, oh yeah, what is the best pair of headphones that I should buy right now? And if I find someone I trust, I'm going to listen to them. Am I going to go to Apple directly from there? And are they going to get an affiliate commission? Probably not, but it's an important part of the funnel nonetheless.
How much of the influencer slash creator world is affiliate driven versus creator paying for content driven? Sort of paid up front. Obviously, Tom and I've joked about every time we're on we're watching someone else's podcast, we're seeing a push for Hell Factor and
Yep.
Hello Grocer and all these things of
HelloFresh,
supplements and or NordVPN and others, and it's like if I have to see another one of those, and it's crazy is like I love astronomy and watch it like deep astronomy things, and they'll jump into Factor food prep, and I'm like, what? It just seems anyway. So how much of that is sort of like, are they getting paid up front for the content versus affiliate, and what's that split generally nowadays?
So I think that's a good question. I don't actually know how large the affiliate. I mean, affiliate is huge, but I think your influencers now, in terms of supply and demand, I think are really understanding their worth, and that they don't have to go the affiliate route if they don't want to, or if it's not a longer term partnership where they're going to get paid
Right.
more upfront anyway. So I think just the overall dynamics have changed, where they're like, no, I really need to get paid for the content that I'm creating. Happy to use an affiliate link so we can track our sales together. And then I think podcasting is interesting because I've always thought that podcasting should really be part of this brand marketing and the majority of influencer marketing that obviously does. But it's really been taken over by performance marketers, and it's very much like use this code and let's just get it out through the network in a way that is interesting. And I think that there's probably some real opportunities to make just more compelling podcast ads too. To your point, it's not great that they're like, oh, I'm so annoyed I'm hearing this again.
What's sort of the
definitely
going
that,
rate when
yeah.
they're paying for the content? Is it $250? Is it $500? To your point about Uniqlo, right? They're sending out 1,000 shirts, and they're expecting to pay $500 per, call it created video or post or what have you. You're looking at $500,000 upfront of the cost in addition to everything else. So it's in terms of the scale these programs are. It's a meaningful, like a media campaign including creative, would for digital would easily, you're looking, it's like its own digital campaign now, its own digital budget, like $500,000, $1 million is a legit marketing program now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a majority of our clients are spending $1 million plus. And I'd argue if you're an enterprise brand, if you're in the Fortune 500, that's really where your spend should be. We do some really interesting mapping where we can actually do a complete competitive analysis on your top competitors. So you choose like 3-5 competitors. We tell you here every creator they worked with on TikTok. Here's every creator they worked with on Instagram. Here's what their benchmarks are for success. These partnerships worked really well. We're thinking approximately they paid this amount to work with those people. We think this is their overall budget year over year. Do you want to, should you be spending more? Should you be spending less? Where is just like the white space for you? Or, hey, this is really working well for them. Maybe we should like get in on that and really try to compete in that area. So I think that's been awesome. And I think it's been really revolutionary for a majority of our clients who are using that as the foundation for all the strategy and creative work we're doing. They're like, oh, okay, this is going to work on TikTok, or like we're seeing this work with our competitors. It just you want to test and learn, but if you can take some major shortcuts in the beginning, like that's how you're going to have a happy client. And to your point, you don't want to spend $1 million figuring it out when you could spend significantly less and just kind of be on the road immediately. But to your point about pricing, it's highly variable based on the size of the person's audience, the platform, and then I think sometimes the brands don't take this into account, but like the sexiness of the brand, super important. We just sent 100 creators to F1. Like, if that's a brand that's like, I gotta sell this to my followers, I'm gonna get some comments about how this is lame. I mean, hopefully we can have a creative brief that is like awesome, and we're choosing people who actually genuinely love it. But that compared to like a really sexy Formula One integration, right. You can have a different price point. We've actually done some really interesting work on. We build out creator networks for brands. So the idea is that one of our clients, Amazon would have their own, or does have their own creator network. Google has their own creator network, and when you work in that format, you can actually really get much more efficient in terms of cost per post, and you can also get higher quality influencers and actually see higher performance as well on the pieces of content, primarily because you're working with people and they're excited to be part of the network. They want to really perform because they know there's like potentially more work to be done. Because
are those networks built around retainers?
Yeah. So typically we'll be like an AOR or have a whole slate of several dozen campaigns lined up for the year with a brand. And then we'll have people apply. We'll reach out to them, hand select them, and then they know, hey, like I love this brand. Like I'd love to keep working with them. I'm really going to take extra time on this video because I know there's like 10 cool things coming up next, which is great because it's really working against the pendulum swing of so many influencer companies just getting so transactional and like, hey, work with them once, but like if you love a brand, if I love Mercedes, I get to work with them once, and then I literally never hear anything back. Like, that's also sad.
Well, it almost sounds like
you're working with real people, and so if you tap into that piece of it, I think it's actually like you can unlock, 20% higher performance on TikTok content on the brands where we built out a creator network versus the ones where we haven't. So
it sounds like you're almost kind of the next version of affiliate programs. To some extent, and we saw this when we were working in the Shopify ecosystem, that there's the publisher world of affiliate programs, and then there's very high growth of affiliate, basically being mostly influencer, and totally different rules, different measurement. But it seems like it's growing very quickly. And to your point, it sounds like it's how these fans of brands are sort of allowed to be part of. It's almost like what we always heard is supposed to happen in the music industry around, bands and their following and their ability to have merch and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you have creators too who just like, talking about maybe TikTok Shop for a second. You have creators who are just so good at selling on TikTok Shop. And that's not everyone. I'd say that's like 15% of the creators we work with. And then they have to have an audience who's like excited for that QVC style interaction. But it works really, really well when you work with them. And some brands want to do that, but we also have brands who are like, no, it's way too salesy for us. Like we don't want to go there. Or, hey, this is just a small segment of the strategy. We have some like really large brand concepts, and we need to choose brand ambassadors who 100% embody our ethos. So it kind of runs.
It's fascinating to watch the rise of TikTok shops, and it's become such a big thing. When Tom and I were at Fantastic, which is the Shopify focus company that we were at together, and we acquired an affiliate platform called Refersion, and Refersion has like 500,000 publishers that they work with, of which publishers, half of those are influencer creators. And so it just, I think, speaks to the scale of this. And what we found is, in getting into that ecosystem and more Shopify focus, but a lot of these D2C brands that are launching on Shopify and Amazon, what the most successful ones are all leveraging TikTok shop creators. Like, it is unbelievable. If you talk to any, and Tom and I've talked to lots of these private label people, and a plug coming up is we're hoping to talk with a really big company in that space on the podcast in the beginning of the year, is how many of them have leveraged TikTok. Like, if you look at those top brands in Amazon, ones you've never heard of, to your point about TikTok creators being able to sell and move product, I was astonished. Like, if for our listeners of this, if you really want to understand this world, there's all a bunch of Discord communities for these TikTok shop creators. It's an interesting ecosystem to dive into and learn more. And how it obviously TikTok is really juicing the TikTok creator traffic. Like, it's just the amount of people making insane amounts of money on that platform as creators is just blown my mind.
Yeah, I think a really important thing to do as a creator is understand what the platforms want to prioritize, and then see if you can find that as quickly as possible. So, like, if you have ever bought anything on TikTok Shop, TikTok will retarget and retarget you with that product, like, until you purchase it. And so if you're a creator who's part of that program,
beat you dead.
Literally, I mean, there's one, and it's also interesting what products do really well. So, like, there's one, I'm sure it's not on either of your feeds, but it's literally like this black lipstick that you apply, and then it hardens and you rip it off like a mask.
That
is
doesn't
definitely
sound
not
pleasant.
in my feed, but I
No,
love
that has
hearing.
not made my feed.
I love hearing about the stuff that doesn't make it to my feed. So that's
Yeah,
great.
it stains your lips for like 24 hours. Like, you can't take it off. And so it's really oddly satisfying to watch. And they're doing so much business. It's wild, and they're constantly selling. And then there's a whole game of like selling out and selling bundles, and when you do that. But also, interestingly, these large brands can't fit themselves in, for the most part, unless they get really crafty, fit themselves into the TikTok shop mold. It is very hard for like a giant multinational CPG to do it. And for like just like operations wise, it's nearly impossible unless you hack something together. We're actually talking to a few companies about what those hacks look like. So it's a really interesting advantage you have if you're like a small D2C brand that's like super nimble and hungry. You just don't have the competition that you would on Instagram ads or TikTok ads.
Interesting.
Now, is this part of because the mainstream CPGs are part of the sort of boring products that don't fit there, or is there different reasons why it doesn't fit?
It's literally operationally. So like the flow to get the product out of the warehouse into at your doorstep, that flow doesn't work.
Because they rely on retailers normally.
Yeah. So they're like, we like,
Yeah,
back
so
to the
it's
legal
built for
team's like, we can't
D2C.
do this. Like, we just can't do it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's built for D2C, so that makes sense why. Yeah, and I think that the Walmarts and Targets of the world are trying to have their third-party marketplace extend to cover that, but they're probably not there yet, if I'm correct.
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's fascinating to follow up on that one point about TikTok and the big brands not going to be able to do that. But one of the things that from an earlier parts of the discussion made that's really fascinating to me is how grown up and mature the creator space, influencer space is, and right in terms of the way you're talking about it and the sophistication in terms of the scale. Hundreds of thousands of creators are running millions of posts. And I think, there's economics, it's scale, and the sophistication. I think, one of the things that's interesting is I talk with marketers who and every brand marketer I work with, especially at either a large retailer or consumer focused goods company, loves the creator space, at least conceptually. And I hadn't realized how, until sitting down with you, how sophisticated it really is to manage, make it, and it sounds and looks like the media business. Honestly, it's really fascinating to realize that. And realize like your ability to target, just like you could on the publishing side. I want to target publishers, a certain demographic, a certain reach, a certain whatever. And you're like, yep, if you want to target creators, I can come up with a list of the 10,000 best for this, different demographic or psychographic variables. And that's, and you to publish campaigns with start stops and manage it in a very sophisticated way.
Yeah, and it's only getting more advanced. So like some of the work we're doing in the B2B space, we can actually tell you like, okay, you want to reach AI data scientists. Here are 10 AI data scientists to work with. And then here's what percentage of their audience also identifies or like we can say approximately are also in that field. Or like, hey, we want to reach dermatologists. 17% of this one dermatologist audience is also a dermatologist. So let's work with her, even though her engagement's a little bit less, some of her following is a little bit less, but like we're going to hit way more of these people and hit them more aggressively. So there's some really, really cool things that you can do in the B2B world just with the targeting technology.
Yeah, how much of that is like, what is that, like an authenticity score? Like what are the types of tech are you guys employing to improve the sort of manual nature of all of this?
Yeah, so we're actually able to look at all the audience members of a given influencer and then look at some key attributes of those people. So, like, what does it say in their bio? What does it say in 10 of their last posts? It used to just be captions, but now it's like images and video as well. So the implications around how we're using AI is like a whole nother podcast, but really, really cool as well. And then who's actually engaging on their post. So you can say like, okay, here's, this one dermatologist, 17% of her following are also dermatologists. And then the people who actually engaged and commented on her post, like this percentage were dermatologists. So we're really hitting the right demo within her overall audience. And then you layer on top the paid targeting to really hit dermatologists. You're able to just make it a way more efficient ad buy essentially.
So that's
but you
interesting
get
because
from someone like really authentically.
Yeah, I'm coming from a world where there was always the thought that social was like the worst in terms of reporting, measurement, and things like that. But it sounds like it's incredibly transparent in terms of knowing who the audience is. So that's not just knowing that you know the audience, but knowing who and what they do and all these other attributes that are not part of a retailer's registration for a loyalty program form.
Right, yeah, because so much of the information is public. So it's just being able to actually compile that and make it useful.
That is super interesting.
Go back to Walmart Connect and kind of the retail
we
media.
barely talked about it.
I know that's we need to get there.
Sorry, I'm here.
Yeah, no, and part of what in terms of realizing how obviously in yourself, obviously the company, not obviously the word, are professionalizing this space and maturing it and making it more commercial in a make it work perspective, not commercial in a selling out perspective. Yep. And what's the relationship then with Walmart Connect? Is it the operational piece of these CPG companies wanting to get in the space, and Walmart's a good way to, like, if you need to ship product and they're a big retailer and you probably have relationships with that, is that the lens you were taking in terms of going into Walmart Connect? Or is it the sort of the advertising and the media piece, and they're trying to connect the dots from a retail media standpoint of extending their advertising into that community? What was the background for you getting involved with Walmart Connect then?
Yeah, so the very beginning, we started doing a lot of work with brands in large retailers, and where the KPI is how do we drive in-store traffic, how do we drive in-store sales in these key retailers. And that's been going really well, and our clients have been really happy with that work. So we're like, okay, and they're asking, is there more we can do with Walmart? Is there more we can do with Amazon? Can we optimize reviews? Can we optimize video on the product pages? What else? So we started rolling out this different functionality, and then I'm like, oh, there's this, all of these brands, or a large majority of these brands are really spending significantly on these retail media networks, but like because the data is fantastic, and also because the retailer really wants them to do so. But what does that piece of content look like that then is showing up all across the internet, being, using the targeting from Walmart's first party data? So we're like, oh, we should, half of this is really cool, but if we could add the second half, which is the piece of content's really awesome too. And the piece of content, like, we've got the targeting, but is the piece of content also gonna be really impactful? And so we've been working, for over a year and a half with the Walmart team, really just like getting the right integrations and getting the right approvals. And we're the second or the one of three agencies currently who have the ability to actually, be a Walmart Connect partner, and tap into their DSP. And so that's been really fantastic. It's also a way to use JBP credit on influencer campaigns, which is huge. So many of our very large CPG clients, because they're like, I have to spend $50 million anyway on a Walmart, like, instead of like double spending on influencer, if I can take some of that budget, let's do that.
You're speaking Tom's language. Whenever he gets to JBP, that is all Tom. So
yeah,
his eyes perked up on that.
I'm trying to teach teaching all the podcasting AI systems. That acronym is the hardest thing in the world when you edit this stuff. Sure. They never hear it right.
It's hard to say.
Same thing with App Lovin'.
I deeply know it, but I'm always like, did I say it right?
Yeah. So it's the same thing with App Lovin'. We had a podcast when we talked about App Lovin'. It comes out as Apple Oven, my favorite. But we digress. So on the Walmart piece, I think you told us that it took like a year and a half to get this sort of rolled out. Can you give us a little bit more in terms of what it's like? How big a part of the JBP is it for a big brand or a small brand, or what kind of brands are you working with?
Yeah, so we just launched, but we have a few very large CPG clients who are really excited about it and are like, now in the midst of their first campaigns. And it's been really exciting to just see, Walmart's data set is so fantastic. You can see like, hey, who's bought diapers for the first time? Like, let's target that person. Who just picked up yoga, they just bought a yoga block, and now they just bought a yoga mat. Let's target that person. So I think it's just getting brands to be really knowledgeable and excited about like how you could work with influencers and influencer content in that way. And then really what's possible longer term with that, and how we go, even deeper there. So it's
so you now, are you able to see what's in the basket? It sounds like you're saying that you have this larger purview to potentially mine that data, and
we're accessing it via the trade desk.
Okay.
And then we're like finding the creators and having the creators make content that would really pair up with the right people in that data set.
Okay.
So then is that an example where the creator content is being turned into an ad that is targeted, exactly, being trafficked via trade desk to target that? Being able to use your JVP dollars for influencer marketing has got to be a huge win. Are you starting to see, I'm sure you're in discussions with other retailers then who have other retail media programs about doing something similar. Is that something you expect to see a lot more of? Is Walmart so ahead of the curve, everyone else is like, what the heck? And it's going to be another 3 to 5 years before we see other retail media programs become influencer platforms too?
Hopefully it's a lot sooner than that. But yeah, we're definitely talking to other retail media networks, and I think they're excited about that too. And the fact that we can bring, we have so many very, very large clients, so we're like, hey, we can bring them to the table. Let's make this work via your,
Well, what's fascinating also, as we've talked about the rise of retail media networks, which is they often get sold in as, we're gonna grow, the money from the vendor by 1% of sales, and they start doing it and suddenly it's like 0.1%, and they're really struggling to drive the growth that they expected in terms of the sell through of retail media dollars. Because look, I'm fine doing buying end caps, that's still good. If I'm not going to spend an incremental 1%, I might shift, or unless you're justifying real attribution, real sales, real whatever. And to your point of if these brands are investing in and want to invest in these influencer / creator campaigns regardless, then your ability to pull that in and say, hey guys, I'm the shiny ball over here. If you want to grow retail media, you really should be looking at touching my world.
Yeah, exactly. Because we've been doing so many campaigns just on Instagram, on TikTok, where the overall goal is to drive sales in Target, drive sales in Walmart. We have a big launch on this day. Let's get people to know that this is happening. Let's make sure we work with creators who we know can really get people to go in store and buy or go on their website and buy. So we're great at that. So to be able to then come to Walmart and say, hey, we've been doing all of this. This has been basically happening on your front lawn and you haven't made $1 from it. Like, let's actually bring that inside the house. And let's both make money together. I think that's exciting because they're spending significantly on the retail media side.
There's basically been an understanding now that you've been acquired by WPP and now that you're partnered with Walmart Connect, the LinkedInosphere, or whatever you call it, is now actually talking about influencer with respect to Mormon's media. And you're starting to see eMarketer, the MarTech Weekly, which I haven't heard of before, create these great tables that have you listed in marquee spots. So I wanted to get your thoughts
I'm loving
on
the placement on both of these.
Yeah, and so you're part of the three big holding company acquisitions, influential, obviously, and leaders. You're also part of the wars between Omnicom and IPG maybe merging, and sort of what does that mean in comparison to Publicis, who's been very far ahead in terms of retail media. When you see these, what are your takeaways for now, for 25? Like, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a really exciting time because influencer was so on its own island for so long. It was kind of part of the brand marketing space, and then you'd have affiliate, which was solidly in the performance camp. But now we have brands who are like, okay, like this is media dollars. Like media dollars are now going to go to pay creators for this content, and then we're gonna, now let's figure out where does that content go, because the content is really valuable and it, converts at a much higher rate than maybe brand created or agency created content, which is super disruptive idea, but it's also really panning out in the data. So I think you're seeing all the big holdcos say like, okay, we need these creator agencies, we need this creator content to really be core to what we're doing, because it is such a connection point between media and between brand and between commerce. And these are people who are online who are able to create content and reach key audiences. So I think it's really, really exciting, and I kind of can't wait to see how it plays out.
Well, I think that gets to what we've talked about in terms of how this whole space is professionalized and matured. And it is part of the media landscape, absolutely. And the tools are there to treat it that way. The ability to track performance, the ability to track reach, the ability to track pressure equivalents and things like that. And that, to me, is, I think, one of the interesting things about learning about, obviously, and your background, May, is that it is a part, and these are media dollars, and they're part of it. And I think the other thing that kind of comes from that, too, there's a community that I'm in called Sunday Dinner, and it's got a lot of brand marketers and creatives in it, and they all talk about creator strategies. And it's I couldn't kick them kicking and screaming to talk about media strategies and plans like that. That's just not as much as what they're interested in. And they love talking about creator strategies and influencer strategies and the campaigns that they can do around that. And it's interesting is that's now part of the media ecosystem. And it's a way of sort of connecting dots, like retail, the rise of retail media, the rise of influencers, the rise of almost the rebirth of affiliate. Like creators have made affiliate programs cool again in some regards too. And it's interesting to see these things we've all worked on over the last 25 years all coming together in an interesting and cohesive and connected way of all these hot topics: affiliate, retail media, creators and influencers and social. It's all happening. And I think this is kind of what we imagined the internet being 25 years ago, especially in terms of the rise of the micro creator, the rise of anyone can be a content creator. Now, and to Eric Seifert's point, everything's an ad network. Well, creators you've built an ad network effectively, right? Yeah. Through this creator network, and you're managing it that way. And so having all these dots connect now is interesting and cool in ways that I think we all kind of foresaw, but now that it's actually happening in meaningful ways, it's very cool to see this come together and to see the work that, to hear about your story and what you guys have done in terms of building this out as a real business is a fascinating story.
Yeah, thanks. I know it's interesting because it's both more performance driven, more measurable, but it's also more human in a very real way.
Right,
So
right.
I
Good
think
point.
I think it's really
Well,
powerful.
I think the reason that you're getting that humanity coming through is that, most of the time when we talk about the growth of retail media, it's been format by format. And I think companies like the Trade Desk were pushing hard to say like, oh, you need to be full funnel, you need to do CTV, you need to do this, whatever. What you really need, it seems, from your success is you need programming, you need content creation, you need creative briefs, you need, people who care about brands to put the content out there in new and interesting ways. And it may not matter so much what those formats are, but it does need to be hitting those sort of awareness notes rather than just the performance. To your point about you're not trying to make everything super transactional, even though it's using retail media data. It is about trying to get higher up, but it may not be on CTV in 2024 or 2025. It may be, you tell me, where are the best sort of places that, what are the KPIs of these retail media campaigns? Where are the dollars going? What channels?
So I think the big thing is going to be matching the content to the right target audiences, and I think you could really roll out, and the scale that we can handle is the scale that most retail media networks and also clients aren't used to. So even other brands who are working on influencer campaigns within these retail media networks, they're working with 3 creators. They're like, oh, you get 3 pieces of content, they're going to be great. But we're like, no, let's do 100. Let's do 300. Let's do can you handle 1,000? Let's do 1,000. So
Scale
I
matters.
think the scale, and then because you could tell a very specific story that's then going to be targeted exactly to the woman who just started doing yoga, and just bought that yoga block at Walmart. So it gets to be a really interesting place, and I think that most brands definitely are not there in terms of realizing or having the budget to handle that amount of scale. And also, conversely, most agencies can't do the scale, so they're not selling it. But I think that's kind of where this all goes, where you could get very, very targeted, and May Karwowski has just started, to do Pilates. So here's target me for every single thing you think I'm going to buy based on all the data that you have Walmart on people who are starting their Pilates journey.
But yeah, those personalization, consumer journeys, I think there's still a lot of people out there in the tech world who are like, oh, we have AI now. We can just, sub in different color shirts and glasses. I'm listening to podcasts where there's people in the TV world who are saying that they're going to adjust the creative dynamically. And I'm like, we've gone down that already with regular imagery ads. And does it really work that well? What about just using, real people doing this and having the 100 flowers bloom that way? So
Yeah, or using AI to generate the mood board and concept for
right, the inspiration.
every single thing that 1,000 different prompts for 1,000 different types of people who are purchasing right now in Walmart, and then the output of all those videos. I think that could be really, that'd be cool to work on.
Yeah, well, you've given us a lot to think about. So thank you for joining us on The Middleman.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to The Middleman. We are very excited to see you in 2025. If you haven't subscribed yet, please go to LinkedIn and search for The Middleman Podcast. See you next time.